All right, today we're going to tear up the script on dinosaurs. Seriously. Forget everything you think you know, because we're going way, way back to the very beginning. We're talking about a time of global catastrophe and unbelievable rebirth. We are uncovering the secrets of the Triassic period, the true dawn of the dinosaurs. So, let's dig in.
So let me ask you something. Close your eyes for a second. When I say the word dinosaur, what do you see? I'm willing to bet it's the king himself, right? The mighty T-Rex, or maybe a Triceratops or a Stegosaurus. But here's a fact that might just blow your mind. By the time T-Rex was stopping around, dinosaurs had already been on Earth for over 150 million years. That is an unbelievable amount of history that we just, usually skip right over.
Exactly. The dinosaurs we all know and love, they're from the Cretaceous period, which is pretty much the final chapter of the story. But the real beginning, Chapter 1, it starts with creatures like this little guy over here, Eoraptor. And it all happens in a much older, much stranger, and way more mysterious time, the Triassic period.
So to find the true dawn of the dinosaurs, we really have to rewind the clock. We've got to go back past the Cretaceous, zoom past the Jurassic, all the way to the very start of what scientists call the Mesozoic era. This is ground zero.
Here's a look at where we are in time. The Mesozoic era, the age of dinosaurs, it's split into three big parts. We are focusing on that first block, the Triassic. It kicked off around 252 million years ago, and it lasted for an incredible 51 million years. Now, to put that into perspective for you, that's about 250 times longer than modern humans have even existed. It's just a staggering amount of time.
But here's the thing. To really understand the world that the first dinosaurs inherited, we have to go back just a little bit further. Because the Triassic didn't just start. No, it was born from the ashes of the single most catastrophic event in the entire history of life on Earth.
It's officially called the Permian-Triassic Extinction, but its nickname is much, much more fitting, the Great Dying. This was caused by about 2 million years. Think about that, 2 million years of nonstop volcanic eruptions in Siberia. It just pumped the atmosphere full of CO2, which created this runaway global warming, and it turned the oceans acidic and toxic. Life on our planet came closer to being completely snuffed out than at any other point in history.
Just look at that number, 96%. Let that sink in for a minute. The oceans were essentially sterilized. Almost every single living thing in the sea just vanished. Gone.
And on land, it wasn't much better. 70% of all vertebrate species were wiped out. This wasn't just hitting a reset button. This was a near-total system failure for the entire planet's ecosystems. It was a ghost world.
And what happened next is just bizarre. The early Triassic was basically a dead zone, an empty world. And in this emptiness, one creature absolutely thrived. A strange, pig-sized herbivore called Listersaurus. It was so ridiculously successful that in some places its fossils make up 95% of all the vertebrates found. Can you imagine that? A planet almost entirely populated by this one single creature. It's just weird.
But, as they say, life finds a way. And out of the ashes of this unbelievable catastrophe, a new group of reptiles began to rise up and diversify. They were called the Archosaurs, and they held the key to the future of the planet.
So, who were these Archosaurs, the ruling reptiles? Well, they are the ancestors of a whole bunch of famous creatures. Crocodiles, for example, they trace their lineage right back here. The incredible flying pterosaurs, they're on this family tree. And most importantly for our story, so are the dinosaurs.
So what was it that made the dinosaur branch of this Archosaur family so special? What was their secret weapon? Well, believe it or not, it all came down to how they stood. Most reptiles at the time had a sprawling stance, with their legs out to the side like a lizard. But the very first dinosaurs evolved something totally different, an erect stance, with their legs positioned directly under their body, just like us.
Now, this might seem like a really small change, but it was absolutely revolutionary. An erect stance is just so much more energy efficient. It lets you move faster, it lets you travel for longer distances, and it even helps you breathe more effectively while you're running. This one single anatomical tweak was a total game changer, and it gave the early dinosaurs a massive advantage in this recovering world. Which brings us to the main event. All right, with the world slowly repopulating and with their new postural superpower, the first true dinosaurs finally step onto the evolutionary stage, somewhere around 230 to 240 million years ago. So let's meet these pioneers.
First up is this little fella, Eoraptor. It was found in modern-day Argentina, and its name literally means dawn thief. I mean, how perfect is that? A beautiful symbol for the dawn of the age of dinosaurs. And you can forget about those building-sized giants for now. Eoraptor was small, only about 3 feet long. It was lightweight, it ran on 2 legs, and it was probably an omnivore, snatching up insects, small reptiles, maybe some plants. It was basically a blueprint for success, fast, adaptable, and super efficient. But not all the first dinosaurs were small. Oh no. From the exact same time and the exact same place in Argentina, we find a much more intimidating creature, Herrerasaurus. Now this was a predator to be reckoned with. Growing up to 20 feet long, Herrerasaurus was one of the first truly dominant carnivorous dinosaurs on the entire planet. With powerful jaws and razor-sharp teeth, it was an early sign of the terrifying hunters that would one day rule the world. And there you have it. We've journeyed from the greatest extinction event in history, we've walked through a bizarre world dominated by a single creature, and we've witnessed the secret advantage and the arrival of the very first dinosaurs. But believe it or not, we are only just scratching the surface of the Triassic.
I mean, we haven't even talked about the other incredible creatures that were evolving during this time. What was going on in the oceans, which were being repopulated by gigantic marine reptiles? What about the skies, where the very first vertebrates were taking flight? And did you know there was another mass extinction event that brought the Triassic to a sudden, violent end? The full story of this period is just packed with even more drama. We're talking about whale-sized ichthyosaurs, the birth of the pterosaurs, a completely bizarre climate event that literally caused it to rain for 2 million years straight. Yeah, you heard that right. And a final, forgotten mass extinction that wiped out all the dinosaurs' rivals and cleared the way for their global domination.
And that's the real takeaway here, you know? The Triassic isn't just a prologue to the Jurassic Park story. It is a standalone epic. It was one of the most violent, chaotic, and ultimately creative and transformative periods our planet has ever witnessed.
Honestly, the origin of the dinosaurs is just one chapter in this incredible, world-changing saga. If you're curious about the giant sea monsters, the first creatures to ever take to the skies, and the other cataclysms that shaped this truly wild era, I highly recommend checking out the full guide that this explainer is based on. It is an amazing journey. Thanks so much for joining me.
You know, when you think dinosaur, you probably think T-Rex, right? But that's kind of like skipping to the last 10 minutes of a movie. The real story, the origin story of the dinosaurs, starts way earlier, in a strange and brutal world that was recovering from near total annihilation. I'm, of course, talking about the Triassic period. Okay, let's dive into this. So, I gotta ask, how well do you really think you know the dawn of the dinosaurs? We're about to find out. I've got a 10-question challenge for you. Think you can get a perfect score? Let's see if you've got what it takes to be a Triassic master. All right, first question. Let's get our bearings, set the scene on this vast timeline of Earth's history. Approximately when was the Triassic period? Go ahead, lock in your answer. And the answer is, it kicked off about 252 million years ago and ended around 201 million years ago. But get this, that's a span of 51 million years. Just to put that into perspective for you, that is about 250 times longer than modern humans have even been on this planet. This period was the opening act for the entire Mesozoic era, the age of dinosaurs. Question 2. The names of these periods, they don't just get picked out of a hat. There's always a story. So why Triassic? What does that name actually mean? Well, it all comes down to the number 3. The name comes from the Latin word trias, which means 3. See, a German geologist back in the 1830s noticed that the rock strata from this period in Germany were really distinctly divided into 3 layers. A red sandstone at the bottom, a limestone full of shells in the middle, and a sedimentary layer up top. 3 layers, Triassic. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, question 3, and this one is a biggie. To really get the Triassic, you have to understand the absolute chaos that came right before it. And what came before was a catastrophe so huge it's got a nickname, the Great Dying. So what was it? This was, and I am not exaggerating, the closest life on Earth has ever come to being completely snuffed out. It was the single largest mass extinction event in history. We're talking 96% of all life in the oceans gone. 70% of land vertebrates just gone. The cause? colossal volcanic eruptions in Siberia that basically cooked the planet, creating this hostile dead zone that all Triassic life had to claw its way out of. Okay, after that intense reality check, let's get to the good stuff. Because life, amazingly, found a way, and from those ashes, a whole new group of animals started to rise up. So, who were the very first dinosaurs to walk the Earth? Say hello to the pioneers. The earliest confirmed dinosaur fossils we have, guys like Eoraptor and Phanerozoic, were found in Argentina and date back to about 231 million years ago. And here's the key thing to remember. Forget T-Rex. These first dinosaurs were small and nimble. Eoraptor was only about 3 feet long. They were just getting their foot in the door. Okay, let's zoom out for question 5. The world these little dinosaurs were running around in looked nothing like our world today. All of Earth's continents were basically smashed together into one enormous landmass. What was it called? That's right, Pangaea, which means all lands in Greek. The single landmass had a massive impact on everything. With no big oceans in the way, an animal could theoretically walk from the South Pole to the North Pole. But it also created a brutal climate, with a vast, incredibly dry desert in the interior, far, far away from any coastal rain. Now for a deep cut, a real brainbuster for the true dino fans. The Triassic climate wasn't just hot and dry all the time. There was this bizarre, world-altering event that completely interrupted things. Any idea what the Carnian pluvial episode was? You are not going to believe this. It was basically 2 million years of rain. A massive volcanic event pumped a ton of CO2 into the atmosphere, causing intense global warming and a supercharged water cycle. This global rainy season caused absolute havoc, wiping out many of the dominant plants and animals, and it's thought this upheaval is what cleared the way for the adaptable dinosaurs to really take off. So, with their competitors struggling after all that rain, did the dinosaurs just immediately become the kings of the world? Were they the apex predators of the Triassic? Nope, not even close. This is one of the biggest misconceptions about this era. For most of the Triassic, the dinosaurs were the underdogs. The top predator spot was usually held by another group of reptiles called crudotarsans. Just think of them as the ancient, often enormous ancestors of modern crocodiles. Creatures like the fearsome Proterozoic were bigger, badder, and they truly ruled the landscape. Dinosaurs weren't the only major new group on the scene. The Triassic saw the origin of another lineage that would one day inherit the Earth. Any guesses what it was? That's right, us. Well, our distant ancestors. The very first mammal-like creatures, things like the tiny Morganucodon, appeared in the Triassic. They were small, probably furry, and came out at night, scurrying around in the shadows and hunting insects to avoid becoming a midnight snack for the ruling reptiles. Okay, we're almost at the end of the quiz and the end of the era itself. The Triassic began with a mass extinction and it ended with one too. What brought this period to a close? It was another mass extinction, the fourth of the Big Five. This one was also caused by massive volcanic eruptions as Pangaea began to rip apart. And here's the wild irony. This extinction was devastating, but it selectively wiped out most of the dinosaurs' main competitors, those big crudotarsans we were just talking about. The path was now clear for the dinosaurs to take over. All right, for our final question, let's zoom all the way out. We focused a lot on the Triassic, but how does it fit in with the more famous Jurassic and Cretaceous periods? What's the overarching theme of each chapter in the dinosaurs' long story? You know, it's best to think of it like a 3-act play. The Triassic was the origin story. That's Act 1, the rise of the dinosaurs. The Jurassic, which came next, was the Age of Giants, Act 2, where they became truly colossal. And the Cretaceous was the grand finale, peak diversity with superstars like T-Rex and Triceratops, right before the final curtain call. And that is the quiz. So be honest, how did you do? Did you get a perfect 10 and earn the title of Triassic Master? Hey, it was a tough quiz, so any score over 5 is seriously impressive. But of course, a 10-question quiz can only scratch the surface of a 51 million-year epic. We didn't even get to the giant 70-foot-long ichthyosaurs in the oceans, or the very first pterosaurs taking to the sky, or all the bizarre plants and amphibians that made up this lost world. The source material for this whole thing goes so much deeper. The Triassic wasn't just a prequel. It was a chaotic, violent, and pivotal turning point that set the stage for the next 150 million years of life on Earth. It decided who would rule and who would hide. So the real question is, Don't you want to know everything about how it all went down?